Good morning, guys. Hope you're well. I'm doing great. If you haven't been to my channel before, then this is a channel where I talk a lot about essential oils, vegan eating, and living a creative lifestyle. So if that sounds good to you, subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I make a video. Today, I wanted to talk a bit about body image and self-esteem and how we deal with these things and how this can be impacted by our creative lifestyles. This is such a big topic to talk about. I feel like there's gonna be things I'm gonna miss and I'm going to just forget like a major point that I wanted to make, but I'm gonna do my best to talk about this, and I would love it if you guys could just comment your experience and your thoughts on this topic too, because I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. So growing up as a girl, as a young woman, I definitely found that self-esteem is like a constant battle. It's something that I think a lot of girls struggle with, and guys can struggle with on different levels, just depending on kind of what's coming into your mind from social media, how your family and friends influence your self-esteem and the way that you perceive yourself. And then, you know, how secure and safe and loved you felt as a child can really impact these things too. So it's such a big topic to really look at and to break down, but I just wanted to chat a bit about this topic because I think it's something that isn't talked about enough, particularly in the arts industries. So I know for myself as a female actress, I'm definitely very much judged by the way I look. And it definitely affects the kinds of roles that I tend to be called in for. And there is, at the moment, that is just the reality of the industry. And I think that there's a certain level of this that is understandable, that makes sense. For instance, I'm not 60 years old, so I'm not going to get to play a 60-year-old woman. Like, that makes total sense. But there's other, obviously, lines where women can feel in this industry like they're held to a certain level of perfection, that they need to have the perfect body and the perfect look and the perfect makeup and the perfect face to make it. And I don't think that's true. And I think that's something that needs to be destroyed. I think that myth needs to be destroyed, because I think people need to be comfortable with being themselves and with being able to express themselves creatively and accepting and loving the way that they look, and knowing that there's still a place for them in the creative arts industries, no matter what you look like. I think another thing that's really important to consider in all of this is that our society puts such a high value on the way we look. It way overemphasizes the importance of how we look. And I think that we need to come back to a healthy balance and realize that the way that you look is not the beginning, it's not the end-all be-all. It's really not the most important thing in life. It's very countercultural, but it's really important that we realize that our minds and our hearts and the things that we do and the things that we say and the way that we impact the world is so much more important than the way that we look. It really is. The way that we look is such a small part of our lives, or should be such a small part of our lives. And I think that we are in a really unhealthy balance right now in our culture, in our society. And we think so much about the way we look. And yes, there is value to that. There's value in being healthy. There's value in taking care of our appearance. But it shouldn't be an all-consuming thing. And I think that when we find ourselves constantly thinking about that one thing, constantly fixating or obsessing over this one thing, we really need to take a step back and just reassess our thought lives, reassess what we spend most of our time thinking about, and try and focus on other things that are more important. Focusing on our friendships, on other people in our community, on things that we're passionate about, and really kind of taking the focus off ourselves for a moment, taking the focus off the way that we look and our own insecurities, and putting our focus on other things can really help. Sometimes these insecurities spring from overthinking the way we look, over obsessing about the little things we don't like about ourselves. And so sometimes just even changing our attention, changing our focus to something else can be such a healthy way of just not feeding the fire of those insecurities. So yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that can really impact the way that we see ourselves is comparison. I think a lot of us can so easily look at other women that we respect, that we look up to, who we think are beautiful, and compare ourselves to them. I think this is really common, and I think that we see this a lot on social media as well. I know that for me, I can't spend too much time on Instagram because I start comparing myself, and I see this a lot in young women that I know who will go on Instagram and see all these all these fitness models and feel like that then makes them inadequate because they don't look that way. And I think there's so many different sides to this, because I don't think that it's the fault of those fitness models necessarily. I think that the way that they look is awesome and it's beautiful, and they shouldn't feel like they have to then hide that or not take selfies because they're too beautiful. Like that would be ridiculous. So I think it's something that we just need to work out within ourselves. When we're feeling inadequate, when we see ourselves comparing, we need to be able to just step back for a moment and realize what's happening, be aware of what's happening, and say no to those thoughts, because you are uniquely you and there's no one else like you. And I think that comparison can be a really dangerous thing. It can stop us from being confident and secure in who we are, and it can actually stop us from living our most creative lives and being our most creative selves. The way that we see ourselves is so vital. I think it's so important. I think it can affect so many areas of our lives. It can affect the way that we come off to people, the way that people perceive us. So I think one of the main ways that we can tackle with this, that we can deal with this, is by retraining our mind. And the mind is such a complex thing. It's basically made up of all these pathways, and these pathways get stronger when we think a certain way. So every time you think a negative thought about yourself, you're reinforcing a negative pathway in your brain. But when you realize how you're thinking and you take a step back and you choose to think something positive and you choose to say something positive, even though you don't believe it and you don't feel it, that starts a new pathway in your mind. It's like your brain starts to dig a new highway. And every time you think that positive thought, it's going to make that highway stronger. And eventually the negative highways dissolve and the strong ones, the positive ones, remain that you've been reinforcing. So there is such power in our minds, and this is something that they've actually discovered through science. Hopefully I'll find a link to a paper that talks about it, and I can link it below, because it's so fascinating how our minds work and how our thoughts totally affect the way that we see the world, the way we see ourselves, and the way we think about life is literally impacted by the way that we think on a second-to-second basis. So learning how to retrain our minds is so important. One of the ways that we can do this is actually through thinking positive things and speaking positive things over ourselves. Another thing that we can do that can be really effective is writing down positive words about yourself. Another thing we can do is actually listening to positive affirmations. So there's tons of recordings out there. If you just type positive affirmation recording into Google, you will find a ton of different playlists and audio tracks full of positive affirmations that you can actually just put on your iPhone and listen to while you're going about life. Maybe while you're doing the laundry, or you're doing the dishes, or you're doing something that's pretty mindless. You can just plug your headphones in and listen to those positive affirmations. And for some people, that can be extremely helpful when they're struggling to think those things and say those things about themselves. I also have other things that I like to do that I found super helpful. And so I actually use a ton of essential oils, and I'll use essential oils to reinforce positive feelings in my mind about the way I feel about myself and about my self-esteem. So I'm going to talk about some of the oils that I use and some of the oils that are really good for just boosting your self-esteem and your feelings of worthiness. So the first oil is jasmine. This is a really beautiful floral oil. It's just very good at calming anxiety and just helping you feel secure and worthy in your emotions. And part of the reasons it does this is because it actually helps balance your hormones. And sometimes if our hormones are a bit out of whack, that can actually cause us to not feel as confident and as secure as we might otherwise. There's also a bunch of citrus oils that really help. So I'm going to talk about some of those. I love citrus oils. They're so fresh and refreshing and uplifting. If you haven't tried using citrus oils, I highly recommend it. So one of the first ones is bergamot. This is actually one of the top oils for boosting feelings of self-esteem. Lemon is also really effective, and then grapefruit. So these are the 3 citrus oils that I like to use. And then another floral oil, so this is in the same category as jasmine, would be the patchouli. And this again is just very affirming. It's kind of hard to describe how essential oils make you feel, but it's a hard thing to describe. But when you breathe in certain smells, it actually does affect the chemistry in your brain, that then affects like the emotions that your brain is sending out. So there's like a whole science behind it, and I think I've actually explained it in another video. But when you smell an essential oil, it basically physically releases certain endorphins and chemicals, because emotions are just chemicals in your brain that really impact the way that you feel. So yeah. And then the last one is spearmint. So this is the last of the 6 oils that I think are key for boosting self-esteem and feelings of worthiness. Spearmint is a very sweet, minty smell, and it blends really well with these other oils. So spearmint blends really well with soft florals and citruses. So I think that what I like to do is I like to just experiment with these 6 different oils and find different blends that I really love the smell of, and basically create like a personal perfume. I just dilute some of these oils with fractionated coconut oil, and I put them in a little roller bottle. And then I just apply it whenever I'm feeling like some of my insecurities are coming up. And it really, really helps me just feel a lot more affirmed within myself and a lot more confident and relaxed. So I definitely recommend getting some of these oils, just trying them out and seeing what smells you like the best. There's so many combinations you can make out of these 6 oils. So there's endless different possibilities, and I'm sure that everyone would be able to find a kind of a perfume-like smell out of these 6 oils. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about on this topic was just about then how we approach fitness without feeling like we have to achieve perfection or without self-criticism. So I think that sometimes we can, when we realize that we're dealing with insecurity, when we don't feel good about ourselves, we can just then give up on being healthy and being fit because we want to accept ourselves as we are. And acceptance is so important, as I've just talked about. It's so key. But I don't think the answer to acceptance, or the key to acceptance, is then giving up on your health and on your fitness journey. I think you can do both. And so what I tend to do, and hopefully this is helpful to you guys, is I make a discipline of working out and of eating healthy. And then when I'm at the gym, if I start to see myself comparing myself to other people, or if I start to criticize myself and my fitness level and where I'm at in my journey, I just take a step back from those thoughts and I choose not to think that way. And instead of trying not to think those thoughts, instead I just focus on a positive thought. Like I focus on how far I've come. So let's say I've been able to do 2 push-ups or something. And before I could only do 0 push-ups. So I'll focus on that and go and focus on how far I've come and focus on my progress and focus on how healthy my body feels and how strong I feel, and just focusing on the positive things. And so I think that is the key. It's not just then throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because working out and being healthy and being fit is such a good thing. So we don't want to get rid of that. And working out in and of itself can really, really help our mindset, because it releases positive endorphins that can help us feel good about ourselves, that can help us feel happy and secure. And so it's actually a really positive thing, but we just need to make sure that we don't become, we don't let comparison and self-criticism and perfectionism creep in to our fitness regime. And I think the other way that we can really prevent that is by focusing on health and being healthy, and not always focusing on the way that we look, because it really isn't the most important thing, guys. So yeah, so that's kind of everything I wanted to talk to you guys about today. If you are interested in dropping my oars, if you are interested in learning more about essential oils or getting essential oils at a 25% off discount, you can definitely check out my website link in the description, because that'll have a lot more details, or you can also email me. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Just wanted to have a little chat about self-esteem and the way that we see ourselves and perceive ourselves, because I think it's such an important thing to be talking about. And I don't think we talk about it enough, especially in the arts world, where this is such a massive focus for us. So yeah, so I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic. So please leave them in the comments below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it, and leave me some feedback. I'd love to know if you guys have ideas for future videos or things that you would like to see me chat about. And I will see you all soon. Have a great day, guys.